¿Qué pasa, HSI familia? And welcome back to ¿Qué pasa, HSIs? I'm your host, Dr. Gina Ann Garcia. And on this episode, we're continuing down the road to healing following the defunding of Title V grants and programs. This season, it was important to me to create space for mourning the loss of the federal funding that HSIs and enrollment based MSIs have relied on to enhance their capacity for serving minoritized students for the last 25 years. The federal government continues to attack enrollment based MSIs, claiming they are unconstitutional under the Students for Fair Admissions versus Harvard case. Their most recent justification for defunding claims that unless there is a compelling interest that justifies a race conscious policy to remedy specific and documented instances of past discrimination at the time the program was created, these types of policies are unconstitutional. But we know that the HSI program resulted from nearly a decade of advocacy with clear evidence that not only were Latina students falling behind their peers with regard to educational achievement and college enrollment, but the institutions that were enrolling them were also facing funding inequities. In fact, Patrick Valdez's chapter on the HSI advocacy that occurred between 1979 and 1992 revealed the data that showed that although colleges and universities enrolling a significant number of Latina students qualified for capacity building funding under Title III of the Higher Education Act, funding to these institutions was remarkably lower and inconsistent. These funding inequities are documented in numerous congressional hearings in which Latina advocates testified about these inequities. But alas, here we are, allowing this authoritarian administration under the 47th president of the United States to dictate what we can do, when in reality, these attacks are grounded in a dangerous race neutral political ideology that dismisses decades of research and evidence of discrimination based on race, ethnicity, and language. What I am most concerned with is the fact that these attacks on enrollment-based MSIs have immediate impacts on the livelihoods of an entire community that benefited from the racialized funding intended to address long-term inequities and discrimination. I called on the developing HSIs grant community to talk to me on the podcast about what this loss of funding means to them, and several people responded willing to share their stories, and I am grateful. I am joined today by Dr. Jessica Morales-Chicas, a professor of child and family studies at California State University, Los Angeles. She is the principal investigator or co-PI on several large grants, including a DHSI grant called Reclaiming Pedagogy, Community, and Student Success, where she conducts large-scale mixed methods research, collaborates with interdisciplinary teams, and designs student-centered interventions that support STEM engagement from middle school through graduate education. She has developed multiple faculty professional development programs that help educators integrate inclusive and culturally grounded practices into their teaching. Rooted in her own experience as a first-generation scholar, Dr. Morales-Chicas is committed to creating educational spaces where all students feel seen, valued, and empowered to thrive. Also joining us is Wendy Vaughn, who is the project director for the DHSI Reclaiming Pedagogy, Community, and Student Success Grant at Cal State LA. In this role as PD, Wendy is responsible for direct communication with the Department of Ed, integrating communication between the grant's PIs and key university officials who monitor the grant's budget and spending, and co-managing essential aspects of all grant deliverables alongside the grant's PI. She brings over 20 years of experience in education, having worked as both an instructor and administrator for numerous Los Angeles County nonprofits, school districts, community organizations, and colleges. Much of her work focuses on connecting students' higher education goals to meaningful careers through creative, often artistic means. I'm super excited to talk to Jessica and Wendy today, so let's go ahead and welcome them to the mic. Woo! Yes. Jessica and Wendy, thank you for joining us on ¿Qué pasa, HSIs, where we talk about all things HSIs. But first, let's talk about you. So, Jessica, go ahead and start by telling us about your HSI journey.
Well, thank you for having us. First of all, we're excited to be here. My HSI journey began before recognizing what an HSI was. I went to UCLA for all of my education from undergrad to graduate school, and I just remember walking on campus and feeling like, whoa, there's not a lot of people that look like me or grew up like me. And so that feeling of otherness kind of stuck with me. And even though, I navigated that space pretty well, it wasn't until I became an adjunct faculty member at CSUN where I walked my first steps on a campus that everybody reflected kind of how I grew up. And so that experience really was very different from where I went to school, and it really was empowering to see people in classrooms, especially Latinx, Latino individuals, really getting educated, breaking barriers and being willing to be mentored by me, and I was just excited to be there, and so that really solidified my interest in working at HSI. I ended up sticking within the CSU. California State University system has almost all HSIs. And so I'm really happy now to be at California State University Los Angeles, or Cal State LA. That is where I am serving as a professor. And that really started my journey in really building programming, building different initiatives, and building research that really understands how do we best serve students. And in particular at Cal State LA, it's students of color and particularly Latino students. And this grant does that. And so it's really exciting to me. My earlier research really looked at K through 12 education.
Mm.
So now being within the university context has really opened doors for me to think about research through a different lens and to really understand what Hispanic serving institutions should be doing to best serve students.
Awesome. Let's go, Cal State. I'm a CSUN alum, so always going to shout out the Cal States. And yes, entire HSI system, besides that little maritime campus, but we'll count them too. We'll just say yes. San Luis Obispo was on here on the podcast a couple seasons ago, really talking about their journey because theirs was an intentional journey, getting to the 25%. So, all right, Wendy, let's bring you in. Tell us about your HSI journey.
Hi, thank you so much for having both of us. And, this is really exciting. Um, for me, I went to schools in like Glendale Unified School District, ended up getting, my junior college degree over at Glendale College, but ended up transferring to UC San Diego and then to Boston University for my master's. All of those places, I was normally in the minority of folks, and it was more multicultural, I guess you can say, but I went into teaching with LAUSD and I started with ESL. And so
Mm,
in Los Angeles, teaching ESL, you're pretty much, working with 90% Spanish speaking populations, people who identify as Hispanic, Latino, Chicano, Chicana. And so it was a wonderful, experience. I really continued into teaching adults mostly and worked with some of those workforce investment board type of places. So like transitional aid use and other um, adults who wanted to get back into the workforce. And so that was mostly also working with people who identify with, that group. So now here we are at Cal State LA, where I really, really get to learn more about what it is to work at a Hispanic serving institution. And that started in 2017. Um, in 2017, working for pathway programs at Cal State LA, we had an initiative, a presidential initiative called Go East LA, which was a really big deal at the time because it was a partnership with the university, Cal State LA, the local community college, East Los Angeles College, and then with the local school district, LAUSD. And so all of those areas, I mean, each of those institutions in the areas where we serve in East LA were primarily Chicano students, Chicana students, and had a chance to work alongside the 50th year anniversary of the blowouts. We did the walk-ins at Cal State
mm,
LA. Cal State LA, that's
mm,
when I learned Cal State LA was the first university to have a Chicana studies program. And it was just
mm.
such a wonderful experience to be a part and meet a lot of these folks who were a part of that history who came back to speak at our university and to see the students and even the faculty and the staff there and the administrators were very I guess you can say inspired, like remembering why they got into this in the first place. So for me, working alongside the students in my role now with the grant, um, the grant actually we've had a really cool, we touch the lives of students right now primarily by training our faculty and making sure they understand the why and who our students are here at Cal State LA. And so that has been extremely rewarding because since I've been here, I haven't seen that type of concentrated lens come to their training. That's been really important.
Okay, thank you. I love that you brought in the K through 12 system because like HSI is a post-secondary phenomenon, right? It's a post-secondary construct, but the reality is if you're an HSI, you're probably surrounded by Hispanic serving school districts, right? Like the schools become Hispanic serving before the colleges and universities.
Mhm.
Obviously, right? Like the pathways into college come from those schools. But we don't do as much talking about that, right? But the reality is, particularly in LA, they're all Hispanic serving, right? Like well beyond Hispanic serving, been mostly predominantly Latino enrolling for a long time. So yeah, so that's a whole nother phenomenon that we don't even talk about, right? In research, which we should. But right now, we focus on post-secondary ed and we're trying to hang on to the eligibility, right? The eligibility process just for post-secondary ed. So, which we're going to talk about now. So let's talk about Jessica. Go ahead and tell us about the Title V grant that you direct or directed. Is it past tense?
So right now it's still current tense. Well, we hold on to our no cost extension, which I'll talk about in a minute. But so yeah, so it is still in progress, and it's called the Reclaiming Pedagogy, Community and Student Success, Developing Hispanic Serving Institutions, DHSI grant, a mouthful there.
Mhm.
But really the overarching goal is to build bridge the institutional, the social, and the cultural divide that we often see in institutions, and we also see on our campus, and the student population, which is more diverse. And so it really aims to improve academic success, and it offers three different things. The first being an asset-based professional development program. Wendy kind of hinted at this earlier. The program really started as faculty development. So we really equip faculty with tools to create a better learning environment that fits the needs of the students we serve, creating more positive, more engaging, more relevant learning opportunities that really honor students' histories. So we take an approach of using pedagogies of place, culturally responsive pedagogy. We have two different sessions that offer those kinds of workshops, and we bring experts in those fields to facilitate that dialogue and to really help faculty think of how would they redesign their course and the materials to better reflect the students and their needs. So that's the first component, and there's three,
Love it.
so bear with
Mm.
me. The second component is a leadership program. The program was intended to be to cycle every year to have a different target population. So we were supposed to serve students, then faculty, then administrators and staff. Given that the grant has been terminated, we have only been able to focus on one, which is faculty again. And so we are starting for the first cohort this semester our emerging leaders program, and it's really there's a lot of leadership programs out there, but there's very few that intentionally take a lens of how to best serve students, and to make it intentional, to have readings that take into consideration place and culture and context, and equity and things like that. So that program is really exciting for me because we're really building something pretty novel. And then the third is academic success learning communities. These are supposed to supplement instruction. So we are working also directly with faculty as professional development, but what they're taking and they've co-constructed as faculty through intense dialogue, intense processes. We bring in research, we bring in wellness, concepts of wellness, as well as leadership as our three core pillars of the program. And then the faculty create projects and really integrate these concepts into their classroom so that the students could be more engaged, and really, across those pillars as well. So those are our three components, but overall, within all that, it's meant to really improve the overall learning of students and support their success, improve curriculum. And we are currently in the starting the third year of the grant implementation.
What up, fam? Thanks for tuning in to season 7 as we elevate the voices of those most immediately impacted by the reprogramming of Title V Part A and B funding. Okay, so thank you for that overview of your grant. So tell us, did you like file a no cost extension? Like, what are you going to be able to accomplish in 1 year? And then, like, how are you going to continue the work?
Yeah, so just like other DHSI grants, ours did get terminated in September, and we were given the opportunity, thankfully, to file a no-cost extension. So we did, and it was approved. Although that was a whirlwind of a process, right? Just not knowing what was going to happen, if and when it was going to be cut, not having access to who to talk to within the Department of Ed. So that was an intense moment, but we did. And so now, because there was a little bit of a delay in releasing the funding to us, so and actually Wendy and I weren't the originators of the ones who wrote the grant. So there was also in the midst of all this chaos, a leadership transition of the grant, which Wendy will talk about a little bit later. But we did have extra money that carried over, and so it did allow us to continue programming. For those that are not aware of what no cost extension means, it's basically the grantor gives you a little bit extra time to fulfill your grant duties, but they don't give you extra money. So if you have extra money, great, you can keep going. If you don't, you basically go until until you run out of the money. And so in our case, we had a healthy, sizable amount left. And so we are operating in full capacity, which is great because we're barely starting the third year. Lots of things were moving. And what's kind of tricky with these federal grants is that they are the timing is not in alignment with the academic year, right? So September, you're in the middle of fall semester, right? So it's like, do you start programming? Do you not? It's really disruptive to really follow that timeline in the midst of trying to start programming. But we're moving as best we can with the idea that come September 2026, the program will officially stop. So that's where we are right now.
Hey, wow. Well, I'm glad you're able to at least keep going for the year. But still, you don't get to carry it out, right? And that's disheartening. The work that we do, we put so much energy into getting the grant, getting it moving, and just not being able to carry it out fully is a bummer, especially because these are 5 year grants, right? And that's the beauty, I think, of the Title V grants is that you get a good amount of time, right, to do something important.
Right.
So you've both mentioned training of faculty. So I definitely want to know more. Let's bring Wendy in. Tell us about your role on the Reclaiming Pedagogy Community and Student Success Grant and how the program has supported efforts to serve your Latina students.
So I was brought in a year ago in January, and actually Jessica and I pretty much split one person's role. She ended up having to go on medical leave, and I became the project director of the grant, and Jessica became one of the co-PIs. And so for me, um, it was wonderful because I've had experience working on other grants, and for this particular one as a project director. I'm able to and have to be the main liaison. It's so funny, like on a university campus, they all care about the PIs, but for the Department of Ed, they really only care about the project director. And so
Mm,
it was, I'm the main liaison talking back and forth with them. But in my role in helping and working alongside Jessica, we've worked along each other on other grants as well. So like a perfect, like, yay, working with my girl here, doing this meaningful work with faculty. And really the heartbeat of our campus is our faculty and our student relationship. Everyone else is of course important, staff and administrators and just everybody, but when you think about just the long term of where the grant's going to go, having faculty understand the community that they're serving, who is coming, the majority of the students who are coming to our campus are Latinx students. And so,
mhm,
CSUs are mandated by the state to admit students who are in a certain area, their service area. And for us,
mhm,
being nestled in East LA and, the Boyle
mhm,
Heights and all these areas, that's going to be Latinx students. And not all of our faculty, especially the ones who are teaching in other sorts of disciplines that aren't more social science based, but like our business and educate, economics college, or our engineering and technology college, they're not necessarily used to working with students and thinking from a critical cultural lens. And so
Mhm.
watching those professors come in and learn about why they started teaching and then how they had to connect their cultural aspect. For instance, like in our pedagogies of place training, the facilitators, their faculty, and they're not necessarily all Latino, but they do come from places that are um, more that are minority, and so they're able to
Mhm.
talk about their culture and how they can take different artifacts from those cultures and then bring it into the classroom with their Latinx students primarily, or whomever, and make that relatable. So they can have a better rapport with their students, and then they can then better learn accounting or formulas for chemistry or whatever the case. And that concept for certain faculty was like a no-brainer, but for other faculty it was life-changing, and we saw it in the research and some of the evaluations that were coming back. What they had to say was extremely positive. So that's one example of what I've been able to help support in this role. And it's just been really exciting to see those light bulbs go off for our faculty who are then going to feed our students.
Yes, yes, I love it. Yeah, I said that I was interested in the faculty component because, like, for me, I feel like one of the best things you can do with your Title V grant is to train your faculty, because your faculty are going to stay longer than anybody, right? Like, even grant folks, the folks running grant, right? Like, admin, presidents, chancellors leave, right? But faculty stay around a while, right? Like, if you can convince faculty to teach different, engage different, work with students different, even think about their students differently, that's going to have such a long-term impact, I
Mhm.
think, right? Like, I think it's such an important place where people have spent so much time and energy. And I think a good amount of these grants do spend time with faculty. So I'm glad to hear that y'all are doing that. So what are y'all doing to move to make sure that it, like, this work can continue past this grant?
We are having a lot of meetings with our higher ups. Not too long ago, we got a new president. She's only been there, I think, going on 2 full years. I know she just had her official, what do you call it? Yes,
Investiture.
thank you. Yes. And and then we also have a new provost, and I don't even think she's been here 2 years yet. So we've done a lot with, making our dean of the library. That's where our grant is housed. He's our head PI. He does a lot of, he attends a lot of meetings with these folks to make sure they understand what we're doing. We have an advisory board as well of folks who advise us, and they come from different. Both from community-based organizations as well as having been in very chief important positions on campus from before, helping to guide us on like how to institutionalize who we should be speaking with. And at this point, we have a really good partnership with the provost office. I'll let Jessica talk a little bit more about some of the awesome work that we're doing with our leadership academy.
So I would say one of the things that I've reflected on with this grant that's a little bit different from other grants, is that, as faculty, we bring, or staff, we bring in, federal grants or private grants. And a lot of times it's to serve a goal. And, sometimes it's a means to an end with the idea of sustaining it, right? But it's kind of like your own research agenda or your own idea to propel some kind of program. In this case, what I see that's different is that this is a federal grant that is meant to be a campus-wide grant.
Yeah.
And so even though a faculty or several faculty may have brought it in, it's intended to change institutional outcomes. And I think that's really different, right, than these other grants. So in our reports that we write, we need to be able to show that the whole institution has changed to some capacity. And that is hard, especially when you're just starting out. But we've taken that as like something that's very intentional in how we program, right? If we are bringing in these programs like the leadership one, how can we institutionalize it? And we're in this weird position now where we're trying to build while institutionalizing. And I know you should be doing that in theory, but people don't think about institutionalizing typically until the end. right? When you're like, ah, the money's running out. But we're doing both at the same time, and it's not easy, let me tell you. But it has been nice to be able to have these conversations to say, okay, sounds like you want to start a leadership program. We'll build this with the lens that we have through this grant, right? The ideas. And then we're going to position it in this office. So that's what we're doing with our leadership program. We are, like Wendy mentioned, positioning it in the provost office. Will continue. I think where we're having a little bit more of a challenge is how to maintain three other professional development programs. It's really hard, right, to pitch that idea because they're expensive. These programs are not cheap, right? It's like who's going to take this on and how are we going to pay for it in the midst of a huge budget deficit? That's really the reality that we're facing. And so we're trying to be creative about how can we integrate and merge some of these programs to make it so that it's easy to adopt them. And you know, we're still figuring it out. I think that it's going to be a process, and that's where we are right now.
Yeah. I feel like these grants we haven't been, we've seen campuses not be very good about institutionalizing because there was always the like the hope that there was going to be another one, right? And some campuses like it's like back to back to back to back, right? Like multiple grants, stacking the grants, and so there was always that hope. And now I think we were going to see a lot quicker institutionalization, right? Like people are moving towards institutionalizing, so maybe that's a good, right? You got to look at the pros and the
Right.
cons of this work. Because everybody I talk to about this, they're all thinking about how do you institutionalize a grant, right? How do you move it into the provost office? How do you move it into student services? How do you move it into wherever you're going to move it? So I guess that's a good thing that we're learning, that we should have been institutionalizing these grants because they're capacity building grants and they're supposed to be institutionalized. They're intended to change the campus. So Wendy, what has the loss of these funds meant to you both personally and professionally?
You know, well, personally, it's like I'm wearing my Dolores Parkas shirt. I got a chance to meet her and work alongside her back in
Mm-hmm.
those days of the blowout. I mean, the commemoration of them, their 50th year anniversary. I learned so much, even though I'm not Latina. A lot of my friends are, and I call them my sisters and my people. And but we're all connected in the human race, and so just to not see like the systematic government level non-support of human beings at a not because Cal City LA wants to do this, but what's occurring, and it's been going on little by little. Um, I guess to see the HSI grant just go away, the DHSI grant go away, is extremely sad, and everyone is. I mean, considering it is our job, it also means that it's less job security for people. So you have that, which is going to cause stress for a number of people. But it also takes away an opportunity from making something much better for students and for people and for the communities that we serve in that area. And like you said in your intro, this neutralization of race, or like kind of like pretend it didn't happen. Um, and everybody, people are protesting, people are unhappy, but it's still just going. It's kind of scary.
Yeah, it is for sure. What about professionally? Are you worried about your job?
Oh, yes, most certainly. We just had conversations today. We have to look for new grants. I'm a part of the
Mhm.
campus side that's fully grant funded, the auxiliary arm. So this grant is a substantial part of my line item and my salary. So that is definitely, unnerving. And,
Mhm.
we have until September, and so we're looking for other funding right now, private sector primarily, because who knows what else is going to happen with state or government or federal funds.
Yeah, for sure. The job loss for me, I like that one is just ugh. it's overwhelming because there's a lot of job loss, right? And it's professionals and also students, right? We employ students too through these grants. A lot of people, some people put a lot, most of their money into like student
Mhm.
funding, right? And that would definitely for students. So the job loss is big. So thank you for sharing that. That's a piece of it. What about you, Jessica? What does it mean for you personally, professionally, for these funding streams to just be gone?
Yeah, so I would say at the start of January is when everything kind of became really uncertain, and the onset of this new presidency. I think we all kind of knew something's coming, and I think we were mentally preparing ourselves, but I personally didn't expect everything. I think in the beginning of the year, of last year, NIH grants are being cut, NSF grants. I had two other NSF grants at the time, and I didn't know which one was going to be cut first. It was like every day, every week. I remember going to conferences, and everybody's on edge. Is my funding going to be cut? What does this mean for my staff? Am I going to have to tell my staff and have these deliberate conversations like, you may want to look for something else? I got your back. What do you need from me? And those are honest conversations we've had to have with some of our staff. And that's really, really heartbreaking because it's not something that I could control. And in a business, you find more work.
Mhm.
In a may have time to like roll out plan B, plan C. In this case, you have no control because it's not your money. It's not, it's a money that's been given by the federal government. So I feel like professionally, it felt like a dark looming cloud over our head, and a lot of uncertainty about what was going to happen. Knowing that this would eventually be cut because it does not align with the federal priorities, especially what we're offering in our programming. But also knowing that, you know, the grant is temporary, and I'm still a scholar who, does this kind of work.
Mhm.
I'm not going anywhere. My work's not going anywhere.
Right.
I will find other ways to do this kind of work. And that I stay pretty committed to professionally. What it has taught me, though, is a lot of perseverance, a lot of patience. We were trying to the best analogy I can give is you're trying to build an airplane while flying it while someone's trying to take it apart. And that's really been how it's felt because, as I mentioned earlier, we're pretty early in the grant.
Yeah.
So we're still building.
Yeah.
We're still building with this looming dark cloud and bad weather, and so it was I think a big growing process for me. I think that this winter break, I called it a cortisol detox. I just needed to disconnect from everything because it's been quite honestly extremely overwhelming. It's hard to run grants as it is, right? But then run grants with this dark looming cloud, I think took a big toll on all of us. And then having the threat of what's happening in the community to people that are family members, our gardeners, our grocery store workers, our grandparent, it just having this looming threat also that people are going to be stripped away from their home and from their livelihood
Yep.
on top of all that created this compounding
Yep.
stressor that I think we felt it in our students, we feel it in our colleagues, but then I feel like as a professional, with this grant, I really felt it because because I really just felt like I didn't have control. What can I do, right? And so, we kept pushing. I think I learned that as a person of color, as someone who identifies as Mexicana, Americana, like it's in our DNA to persevere. And so, we're going to keep on pushing. And so that's really been the attitude that I've had personally and professionally. Like I said, the work's going to continue. And I think, in following, learning about your work, Gina, about servingness, I think that's been a really good way to also pivot, right? At the end of the day, like they can tell us what words not to say. We're still going to serve our
Mhm.
students
Yeah.
in the best
Mhm.
deserved, right? And so I take your words seriously because I really it helps us kind of keep going in the midst of really just a system trying to demoralize us, for lack of a better word.
Yes. Yeah, your analogy is good because I was like, not only is did it, well, the plane what you were trying to build it while I was flying, but yeah, the storm, right? Really, because it's like this thing you cannot control, right? And it was not just a rainstorm; it's like a rain, hail, snow.
Tornado.
It's all of it. Everything's just like flying at us. Like there's no way to fly this plane.
Mhm.
And then they for the project, right? Like all of that
Mm-hmm.
and the weather, right? Like it's just been just this terrible situation that and I agree. January 2025, I knew this was coming. I knew it was coming. I was like
Mhm.
winding down even my own operation. So I do a lot of public speaking, a lot of professional development for HSIs, and it's all funded by the HSI grants. I had a full-time person that was managing all of my operations and had to in January by January, actually in November when he won in November 24, I was like, you're gonna have to find a new job. Like it's not, there's no way we're gonna sustain this second term, right? Like I knew it. It was so we knew, I think we all knew, but I think people just hoped it wouldn't be as elevated, right? As the first, like the Trump 1.0 was bad, but the 2.0 like got extremely bad. I keep saying he went underground like for 4 years. It was like the Voldemort, right? He went underground, got uglier and meaner, and came back and like just destroying everything. So yeah, like we're dealing with it, right? We're dealing with all of it. So you mentioned the servingness framework and the campus, right? Like how is the campus dealing with it? Because the campus has also gotten accustomed, right, to getting HSI grants, Title V grants. So how is the campus moving forward as we think about there's not going to be these opportunities, but we still have to do servingness for what is a majority of our population being Latino identified.
Mhm.
It's, I mean, the reality is that we don't really know because I think the reality is that institutions are also
Yeah.
afraid. And I'm not saying our institution is, but I think that we're in this position now where, institutions themselves are being threatened.
Mhm.
It's you can't have a DI office or you can't, and so I don't know where our campus stands, quite honestly. I know that they've been very supportive of our work, which is telling to me that they're still moving forward with this type of work. I consult with the DI office on campus, and that's where I'm really trying to position some of this work in as well. I meet with the director every, or not the director, it's the vice, I forget the full
I
title, but
know.
anywho, pretty regularly. So I know that the priorities are there. I just it's hard to know, and I think it's hard for them to take a stance because I feel like a lot of administrators are afraid, right? And like one thing you can say, the media twist it, and then there you go, you're under fire. And so it's hard to really say, but I will say I do feel confident in the fact that they're willing to support us, they're willing to support this work, and that we do have leaders who are committed to serving our students
Mhm.
and really taking that serving us framework. How it will happen and when, I don't know.
Mhm.
Sad.
Yeah, no, it is. The servingness framework is what I hope people will, and a lot of people are. They're saying, yeah, we're gonna use the framework, right? Because the framework really is about organizational transformation. The thing is, the grants gave us the levers for change, right? They allowed us to work on those change mechanisms, right? But we don't have that, so it,
Right.
it does. It moves slower, right?
Mhm.
That it will just move slower, but it doesn't mean we have to stop the work because our students didn't unenroll because we became defunded, right? They're not like, oh, okay, we're going to another institution. They don't even know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
didn't attend because we're HSIs. We're not at that level yet, right? We're not there yet where students are really pursuing us because we're HSIs. That it's not that level of awareness. So they're not going to stop attending. They're still here.
Right.
We're still Hispanic enrolling. I keep saying enrolling, if anything, right? But a lot of campuses we're moving towards the serving. So yeah, we've got to stay committed. So, Wendy, how are you grieving the loss? I keep asking folks to like, what does the loss mean to you? But like, how do you grieve a loss like this? Because we do have to grieve, right,
Mhm.
in order to move forward. So how are you grieving the loss of this funding and potentially this work?
That is such a great question. When I saw it, I believe for me, I'm spending as much time, I'm actually deepening my connections right now with all of my colleagues and with my students, and just really just thinking about if this is coming to the end, not just of our grant, but like because it supports so much of my salary. If this is the end of my time here at Cal State LA, in the next few months, I want to make sure I give it all I got, So for me, it just makes me want to go out with a bang, um, and be as supportive as I can, my students
Yeah.
and my colleague, my coworkers.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, I like that. Going out with the bang. What about you, Jessica? Have you thought about mourning yet? Because you're still running the grant. There's that. Y'all might not be in mourning yet.
Well,
Up there.
I feel like I'm at different stages. You know how there's different stages of
Yeah.
grief? I feel like there's been different stages of this process.
Yeah.
Um, like I've passed through the anger,
Yeah.
really angry. I passed through the uncertainty, the fear, the stress, right? I think once, quite honestly, once we got the official termination, I almost felt like a sense of I could breathe now because I know it's there. It's like you kind of know something bad's going to happen and then it happens and you're like you've been stressed out about it for so long that it's just like you have nothing left. And that, I mean, that's kind of the best way I can put it is that I knew this was coming. We knew it was coming. We've had this dark looming cloud and then finally it happened and we're like, well, there's it is what it is. We got to keep moving forward. There's no time to stop. We're going to keep pushing and, and stay hopeful because we can't sit here and just be angry and upset when we still got planning to do, right? So I think I think had we not had any funds, I'd probably, like you said, it would be a little bit different. But in this case, we just have to keep pushing because there's still people that are depending on us. There's still work that needs to happen. So, but it's been different stages, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. That's real. I mean, that's the reality as we're going through all these emotions. Even like this podcast, I took we usually launch another season in the fall and I couldn't do it. Right. I was like, in whatever stage of grief I was like, I cannot pretend like I'm gonna come on and be a voice of reason or a voice of hope, right? I wasn't ready to offer that voice. And people look to me in the HSI community to provide that hope,
Yeah.
right? They want me to say it's gonna be okay and here's what we're going to do. And I was like, I can't do that, right? Like, and we would have recorded even before September 10th, the defunding, but we were already moving that direction. There was already the Tennessee lawsuit. And so we knew, right? Like we were moving that direction. There was just no way I could do that, right? But this season I felt like I could. I was like, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to do this in community with others, right? And to start talking about this, what this means and how we're gonna keep moving forward.
Yeah.
And it's real, right? It's a real sort of processes we're going through.
Hmm.
So then I guess the flip question is, well, how are you finding hope and joy? Right? Like Wendy, you say you're gonna go out the big bang, but is there anything in particular you're doing to remaining hopeful in this process as you think about the fact that you're potentially losing a job, think about the fact that you potentially might be working. It sounds like you love your colleagues and coworkers have some great connections. So like how do you find hope and joy in this time?
I mean, I can't let anybody go at this point. I want to find a grant that's big enough to keep all of us together. We have a lot of very
Yes.
young professionals who are alumni from Cal State LA. They love their jobs. They've shed tears about some of these things, and so it's like, and now I'm feeling like my mama bear coming out a little bit, wanting to, I got to protect myself, but I want to protect them too. So I guess my hopefulness here is that the money might be leaving from these areas, but it's going somewhere, and we're gonna find that
Mhm.
money, and we're gonna get something. I just feel very confident that some way we're gonna get something to continue doing meaningful work. That's
Mhm.
really, whether it be at Cal State LA or at a community college, but that's where my focus is at this time, and that's keeping me
Mhm.
hopeful.
Mhm. I love that. Oh, I'm keeping everybody. We're gonna get a big grant. Don't worry. That is so like optimistic, right? And that is what we need right now. Like if we just sit down and like, cry, like what is that gonna do for us?
Right.
Right. So I love your optimism of like, no, yeah, we're gonna figure it out. We're gonna stay together and be together and find that money. What about you, Jessica? How are you finding hope and joy in this time?
Good question. I think in seeing the impact that that the program has had so far, because sometimes, we can't get stuck on the like what just happened, because then it's just depressing. It's sad, right? Like these grants will not exist and we don't know if they will ever come back, right? And so I try to just not get stuck on that, and just get stuck on, okay, well, what did we do while we were here? And some of the folks that have participated, they want to just keep joining our other program and our other program, and they're so committed and they want to keep working with us. And they've told these transformative stories about how it's changed how they see education, how they work with their students. And we're still in the process of collecting the data. And so I can't wait to see it, because I want to be able to tell their stories and to show the work that we've done. And so it gives me hope that there's still more, and we'll find, like Wendy said, we'll find a mechanism to continue this work. And I'm also hopeful because, as I mentioned earlier, the university is committed to somehow keeping some of this. And so if we can leave at least one piece of a little legacy in that, then we did our job, right? Even if it was cut short, we still accomplished the goal. So I'm hopeful in really pushing that and seeing that through. And then in terms of what Wendy's saying, we were having this conversation earlier, on the side. And so now hearing it again, I'm like, Wendy, no, you're not going anywhere. We're going to figure it out. Because that part's really hard, right? I think we've built really good working relationship with our team, and that part is unfortunate. So we'll have to be creative about how we continue as a team, and making sure that everybody ends on a good note and a positive note.
For sure. Wendy, you said you work with the program officers at the Department of Ed. Have like they gone away? I've been wondering that.
Uh,
Like haven't because they've lost their jobs too, right? We're talking about loss. Like there's tremendous loss,
from
layers of loss.
It's tremendous loss. And one thing I want to make sure people know, if it hasn't already been stated, the program officers at the ED are 110% on the side of making sure that they preserve any original thought
Hmm.
in these grants. They don't share the thought process of their boss.
Yes. Yeah.
And so in every single one, we've had the pleasure of working with two women closely. Both of those women have been reassigned. I'm going to assume,
Wow.
I don't know if they've lost their jobs, but they're no longer the people that we're meeting with. We actually have our first meeting since the no cost extension back in September tomorrow, and it's a totally different person's name. So
Mhm.
I'm not certain what's happened with but you're right. A lot of people have been laid off. These decisions have disrupted thousands of people.
Yeah. Yeah, there's thousands of us, like in all kind of ways, right? There's direct, and then I keep saying like the indirect, and then also like the collateral damage, right, along the way. Like I said, even me working with campuses, right? Like I like a lot of the work, the ways that people were bringing me to campuses was through these funds, right? Like that's gone, right? Like Escala, right? Or programs like Escala, same thing, right? That they
Mm.
were really campuses were using their funds to pay for other things, right? That like a bunch of people are just impacted when funding goes away, right? So thank you for that. Yeah, I wanted to ask you that. I was like, oh, wait, let me throw that one back in because yeah, we're not thinking about our program. The program officers are also right. We know that thousands of people were laid off from the Department of Ed, so those folks too we got to think about. I need a whole podcast episode of just of that, right? Of like how are y'all continuing on, right? And doing the good fight. So thank you all or thank you both for being here today to talk about this important conversation, to share with our listeners. So final question, if you've listened to the podcast, the final question is the name of the podcast, ¿Qué pasa HSIs? So how do you respond to that? Jessica, we'll go with you first. ¿Qué pasa HSIs?
I think that's an important question to ask ourselves now, right? I think if the funding is not there, what are we going to do? ¿Qué pasa? Like, how are administrators going to continue leveraging this kind of work when the money's not there? And how are they going to get creative in the midst of a budget deficit? And so I really pose that question to your question to all of our administrators that are working in these institutions, because ultimately they're the ones making the decisions. There's a lot of faculty like myself and staff that that are committed to this work, but they need to have our back, right? They need to put us in positions that, they're going to back us up if we're applying for other funding that may not align with the federal priorities, right? And so I think that's an important reflective question for any administrative leader, and I'm hoping that that's what folks are thinking about now, right?
Yeah. What's up, admin? What you gonna do?
Yeah, I want to
Mm,
say that que pasa HSI, we don't die, we rise. I want to say that because I personally think it's only a matter of time. We're in this really awful season,
Mm-hmm.
and there's gonna be a time when people that are disgruntled, innovation comes from the bottom. So this is unsustainable. Like what I
Mm-hmm.
see happening um across the nation within higher ed on our campus, it is
Mm-hmm.
unsustainable. You
Yeah.
cannot lead that way.
Mm-mm. Yeah, we don't die, we rise. Nothing is burying us, but we were seeds, right? And we gonna come back from this. I love that. Thank you for joining me today on Que Pasa HSI.